Hello, YouTubers. This is Burr Stewart, and I'm bringing you a live stream of some construction work I'd like to do today. But first, I'm going to give you a little tour. It's been quite a while since I did a live stream, and I've been doing some boring grunt work type things that I thought would not make very good watching, so that's why you haven't heard from me for a while. But now I'm going to give you a little bit of an update on what's been going on, and then we'll get to work on some scenery and track that I want to do. Should be fun. So first of all, I'll switch to the other view so you can see the layout, and I'll give you a tour of some things that have been going on. After that, we'll get down to work. Some of this you may have seen in some of my recent videos, but I thought it'd be fun to do a little live stream, and also I needed to get some work done this afternoon. So I recently took in this Heistler, this Rivarossi Heistler, which has been a lot of fun. It's a little hard to figure out how to work the CVs, but I whined enough about that in my video. And what we're going to do today, in a few minutes, is we're going to relocate this track over into the hillside here, because I just added a dual gauge turnout to increase the usability of the Delta yard for the narrow gauge. Because as you know, if you've been watching my videos, I finally put an upper deck for the narrow gauge to go to. And I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'll get to that in a minute. That's the town of opportunity. But let's just start with some other progress that's been happening. As you're familiar with, this is the Inner Bay Yard in Seattle. And we have been putting in track. We did a fun live stream on cutting in scenery. And lately, Dave has been doing a bunch of adding foliage and trees to this area. You can see there some foliage behind the oil platforms, and we covered that retaining wall there in a different video. But see, he's put in some nice hillside covering here, and we have plans to do some more on the back there. And then around the corner, over the bridge number 4 in Ballard, he's put in a whole bunch of trees down here on this hillside, which really picks the area up a lot. And it'll be great for future videos. See, this is all new bushes and trees. So he did a really nice job here with these bushes that are hanging over the side of the road. And I really like it. I really like the effect over here with the deciduous tree hanging over the track, which will be cool to run a train through there. Dave also put in these culverts. These culverts are Woodland Scenics plaster castings, but they really add a lot to the realism of the scene. So anyway, I'm just showing you some of the recent progress. These trees, like I say, were not here before. And if you look at some of my old videos, you'll see that the trees are not there. This is the area of Golden Gardens, and this is a beach here. You can see the couple making out there. And I think that really makes it look a lot more realistic. The other thing he did that I really like is to add a few evergreen trees into the deciduous mix on this hillside. And that's quite realistic as well. If you visit Seattle and see the hillside above the double track main line, there are occasional evergreens mixed in with the deciduous. It's not all just a deciduous situation. So that's that part of the layout. Just bear with me. I'm going to do a couple other updates, and then we'll get to work on the topic du jour. Now, Over on the other side of Inner Bay, Magnus has been working on the Pier 9091 auto rack complex. You can see we got rid of all the auto racks. We still have a few cars waiting. And we put in this striping, which we did a video about. Looks very nice. But then we decided to come back and extend the pavement all the way over to the yard so that it looks a little more, just a little larger area for a auto loading um, scene. So that's also work underway, and we've just been gluing down. We extended this track a little bit and been gluing it down. We actually don't need this anymore since I think the glue, actually look at that, the glue still isn't dried after 2 days. And that's because it was covered up by this weight. So I think I'll take the weight off and hope that the glue is dried enough that we won't have an issue with that. And the final thing that comes in the name of progress, of course, is this upper deck, which we call the town of opportunity. And I've been laying a lot of narrow gauge track here somewhat temporarily. We haven't done any ballast or anything like that. You can see a couple of loose pieces of flex track still. But this is pretty much the arrangement that I had in mind. The track with the Conoco tanks on it is the reverse loop. And then the track with the boxcar on it there, that's going to be a future main line that's going to climb up to a future staging yard up on the wall above Bellingham. But that's for a future year. Anyway, going around this upper deck, we've got a mine stand in there. We're actually working on a better model of a mine. And then my friend Eric Van Nice just brought over an old station that he built years and years ago. And since we decided to name this town Opportunity, he went ahead and put the sign on there to tell you that this is Opportunity, the station. And if you really want a puzzle, you can study this station and tell me what is wrong with it. It looks absolutely beautiful, but there's something that he didn't quite get right, and I'll just let you figure this out later if you want to rewind the video. I'm not going to hold the camera on it any longer, but other than you can admire it. And of course, these buildings are all just temporarily showing there could be buildings. They're not, we haven't laid this out or planned it. But clearly there's room behind the station for a whole western town here with the hotel and all the other things you might find in a western mining town. So I'm looking forward to that. Hello, John. Thanks for joining us. Now, this is a skewed bridge that Eric Van Nice also built many, many years ago, and it fits in here pretty well. But I just cut a temporary foam core or gator board abutment for it right here just to temporarily hold it in place because I want to build not only a nice pile support for the end, but also, as has been commented on a couple of videos, we need a deck bridge here, a timber deck, a truss, which also needs to be skewed because of the angle on this abutment. So that'll be a project, which I'm not going to delve into too soon. But anyway, that upper level town now allows us to take trains from Delta and go up to Opportunity by way of the two intermediate towns, which, as you may know, are Paradise on the other end of the other side of the peninsula, and then this is the town of Hope on this side of the peninsula. Someone was joking that we have Paradise, Hope, and Opportunity, so the next town should be Motive. Like you need a motive in order to take advantage of an opportunity. But whatever. Actually, I think just to carry that for a second, what I hope to do with the main line after Opportunity is run it up a tanglefoot curve type loop and over this beam underneath or above my head and over onto the wall here where I can have another staging yard. And I think since it'll be a Y there with the staging yard, I'll probably call it Grand Junction because the whole idea here is that the narrow gauge eventually went from Everett, Washington, all the way back to Colorado. And it seems to me that Grand Junction is where it would have uh, connected back to the DRGW, just like in the old days in this fantasy scenario that we have. So um, that's the plans. Now, one more little update, and then we'll get to work. I don't know how many times I can say that, but there's nothing like procrastination, right? You don't need to see that bottle of alcohol there. So this is the Delta yard, the back of the Delta yard, and I spray painted all these tracks, and we haven't started ballasting, but clearly that's the next step. Although it'd be fun to make some of these ties uneven, different shades. But I needed to have a turntable because we have the loop on the other end that we just saw up at the upper deck, but we need a way to turn engines down here. So taking from the Bob Hayden, Dave Frary method of using a audio plug jack and socket, I just took a 1/4-inch audio plug, screwed it into a hole in a piece of wood, and I flattened out the electrical contacts and soldered them to these two rails, and then installed the socket in the plywood on the base of the layout. I think I'll just, if you don't mind the jittery, I'll just show you this close up while we have a chance. So this was a hole that I cut in the homosote. This is 1/2-inch homosote on 1/2-inch plywood. And so here's the socket on a small piece of styrene that I used as a base plate. And then this socket just goes right in here. It makes the connection for the two rails. And it just allows you to slide the turntable around, and it maintains very precise alignment. And it was an absolutely brilliant idea, which I read about in Model Railroader magazine in the 70s from the article by Bob Hayden and David Frary, who were some famous scenery modelers. And I'll just show you close up here. Again, my apologies for the handheld jiggers, but you can see how close these tolerances are to the edge of the turntable is the tracks, and I expect this to maintain its alignment for many years to come. And of course, this is what you call an Armstrong turntable. It doesn't have a motor or anything. I just put a couple of uncoupling picks, barbecue skewers. I just screwed them into some sideways holes in the wood. So it's easy to turn a locomotive, and you keep turning it, in here until you get it pointing the right direction. And if you want to store the locomotive on these tracks, you can do that. And I also hooked up a on-off switch, which I haven't labeled yet, but right over here on the side of the layout, there's a switch you can push on to energize those tracks. And I can turn off all of these engine tracks if I don't want to hear the constant noise, of the, hi Robin, good to see you. The constant noise of the sound units. Sometimes there's enough noise already without, too many locomotives. So that's kind of an update on the Delta yard. But there was one thing wrong with the Delta yard. Well, many things, but there was one thing. that we decided to address, and that was that we didn't really have a place for flat cars to exchange with the transfer loads between the standard gauge and the narrow gauge. And since this is primarily a standard gauge model railroad, it seemed like we needed to do something about that. Now we had a track that came off from the yard, the narrow gauge yard, a dual gauge track that came over and went to the stock pen. And you've been seeing that stock pen for years in these videos. But what we didn't have was any place to transfer uh, loads onto flat cars. And I thought that since stock movements are intermittent, it would make sense to just put a second track in here and have a transfer crane. We've got just enough room here for a transfer crane so that we could park flat cars, both standard gauge and narrow gauge flat cars, and transfer goods back and forth. So with that in mind, I installed a Shinohara dual gauge turnout right here, which I just finished working on, and it was I couldn't really do a video about it because it was kind of boring, but it's all wired up now and ready to go. But I thought it'd be kind of interesting for you to see what I have to do now to straighten out this track. Let me just move it over. This is going to be live TV here. I mean, live construction, because I'm about to do this job with you watching. But see, what we want to do is straighten out, put this track in here and straighten it out. Now, uh, basic idea, um, the basic idea is something like this. But as you can see, there's a hillside in the way. So what to do? Um, there are basically two choices here. One would be to make a vertical cut here and put in a retaining wall. And the other one would be to reshape this hillside so that it comes down to the track in the same manner as the existing hillside does, just on a gradual slope, which is I think is a little more realistic. How much money you would spend on a retaining wall just to have a stockyard in a place like this is a little debatable. So I'm going to carry you around for one more second here, because I want to show you this dilemma a little more closely. So here's what we want to do. We want to basically go straight to that back track and cut out some of this hill. And you can see there's a little rise here with a tree. Well, fine, but it doesn't need to be. So one of the things I thought was, let's look at it from the other side of the layout and see if we have any objection to taking down that little knob that has that tree on it. And we don't. I'm just going to take you over here so you can see it from a distance. Now we'll blow up the screen. So there's the knob with the tree on it. You see what I'm talking about? Now the question is, if that knob was a lot lower, would we care? And perhaps the tree smaller or something like that. Would we care? Because if we would care, that would be a reason to put in a retaining wall. But as I look at this, as we're following a train along that curved dual gauge track, I just don't see why we care. And you feel free to. This is your last chance to tell me otherwise. But I think part of the design process is figuring out what's important. Now here's a view of it from the other side of the layout again, the end of the peninsula. And you can see here, if we take that hillside down, nobody's going to ever know that it was there except you and me. We'll always know that we took it down. But I really think that a sloped hillside looks better there than a retaining wall would. And I've got plenty of retaining walls here that I'm very happy with, but this just seems like a place where it would be worth the extra effort to just slope in new scenery contour. And it's really not that hard. So let's go back to the view that isn't quite so magnified. Although actually, you might want to see it a little bit more magnified. So you get the idea? We're going to take this tree out. I'll do that right now. So much for that. And then we're going to make a mark where we want this track to be. And we can use a pen for that, just to help guide us. Although I think we're going to need more help than that. So as I put this straight piece of track here and try to line it up with where I think it's going to go about like that. And so what we're talking about is something like this. We're going to basically cut something like that out of the hill. And I think the simplest way to do it would be to take our saw and just make a saw cut along here. I guess you need to have a little bit more, don't you? So you get what I'm going to do now. I'm going to take this out vertically. That's going to give me a sense of where we need to go. And this is kind of a bendy, flexible saw, but it's nice and sharp. Totally does the job here. And we're just going to take that out, cut it down all the way to the wood, the base there. And then we can remove it from the, then that sounds easier than it might be. Let's see, maybe a putty knife is the right tool. I have this bright red, Red Devil, it's called. This is a scraper tool, which is, as I'm always saying, is the #1 most important model railroading tool there is for shaping scenery. So if you see from this angle what I'm doing, I'm just shoving this putty knife underneath there, look at that. It just is coming up. There's some amount of glue down here, but not too much. Bang! You can see how the glue is there. So much for that piece of scenery. It was a nice idea at the time, but now we've got a whole different, there's something interesting. The edge of the plywood. I wasn't expecting that exactly. So now we can take our piece of, what do you say? Shall I use the vacuum on this before we go any further? Some of you are probably thinking, I wonder how long you can keep those cows standing. I'm wondering the same thing. I'm wondering the exact same thing. Not only how long can I keep the cows standing, but how many of them am I going to end up accidentally vacuuming up? So our piece of track looks like this. And if we flip it in there, now remember, we had the option of just doing a retaining wall there, but I think it would look better if we smooth that scenery out. And I'm gonna take the camera back to the other side, the other view we had before. Let's just see what this looks like and see if we like it, like the way it's shaping up. See, that's the view from the other side of the layout. Now it doesn't look like it's quite over far enough, does it? Well, we could move that curve. That's the question. We could. That suggests to me we didn't quite get it far enough over. But that is a detail that we could work out later. since we don't want to take all day doing this. I think it would make more sense now, since we've decided to try carving this. Let's just go ahead and carve it. So there are three tools that we can use. One is this rasp, one is this saw that we had already, and another one is a rougher saw, which I have in my drawer. And I like sometimes for its flexibility, but it's a little rougher. And I think we should just. I think I'm going to use that other saw. The other saw has a narrower blade, and that just can be good, even though it makes bigger sawdust. This is what I'm talking about here. This type of a saw, I can see I can go up and down with it a little more easily. If I use this, I'm stuck with the more of a plain, like, straight surface. So let's just try cutting this up. Can you see over my arm? How about if I move this over here? I hope the movement of the camera isn't too annoying. Yeah, drywall saw. Thank you. Good to see you all here. So yeah, is that a decent view? I'll try this, cutting this now. We don't need that little bush. We're just gonna, I don't need to keep this piece of track for a moment, but we'll just kind of, this makes kind of a mess. And it's not necessarily well thought out. So at this point, I think I'm happy to use my rasp. That's enough with the saw. So see, this is the part I was saying. We can just come down here, smooth it out, round it with the existing scenery. We can bring this down. In a way, it'll be kind of fun to be able to see a little more of the train here. That looks like something I did with now in the real world, you might have some erosion here, and we could cut in some erosion. We could do all kinds of things. I kind of like the idea of a little unevenness. The trouble with this type of scenery work is you get carried away with your own cleverness, and then you end up doing something stupid. But remember how there was a little bit of a bump there? I like the idea of leaving that in. Okay, so let's take the vacuum cleaner, get rid of all this. Stand by one. Now you can't probably see anything but bright blue, which is too bad. I've got a little bit better angle on it. We don't need that dried blue there. But Now, just because we're doing live TV doesn't mean we can't be careful, right? So let's just go over and check out how this looks from the distance. We've got our track right next to the hillside there, and we're going to go over to the other side and get the telephoto view of it. Oh, that's looking better already. See, it's coming right to that curve. We can put a tangent there. I know it just looks like bright blue on the screen. I wonder if I can change the, can't change the exposure too well. But that looks fine. That looks really fine. That looks like it was always like that. So we're going to just examine it one more time, and then maybe we'll paint it and put scenery on it. You can see how fast that goes. Now this track here can come up. We can pull this track up and straighten it out if we want to, but that's really a decision for another day of exactly which piece of track do we want to use. Kind of like the idea of leaving it here in place for now because we don't need to touch it for the purposes of putting in this scenery. All we're doing is just putting in some scenery, some ground cover right here. So I think what I'll do is oh, that's silly, isn't it? It is silly. Let's just take this track out. I don't know if I showed you. See how easy that was? I glue my track down with something called liquid latex, and the reason I like using it is because it's so easy to remove track later, and I can't tell you how many times I've done track work that I changed later. So it's much easier than other ways of gluing it down. And you can see on the roadbed here, this is where a drop of liquid latex with some, detergent in it to make it wetted, went underneath the tie. And here it went under 3 ties. But in between, there was nothing holding that track down. So it was very easy for me to just pry that up, especially over here where there was grass on the scenery. The liquid latex was hardly holding it, just enough so that it was, quote, permanently on the layout, but not so much that that it was hard to remove. I mean, you saw what we did just there. Let's see, what's the right angle going to be for you now? Something like that, maybe. Something like that. Yeah, no kidding. No kidding, Sparky. I was making a joke earlier. I don't know if you were on yet, but about how many of those cows I was going to suck up with a vacuum cleaner. But so far, I think we're at 0, but we'll see what happens. So, of course, we could be fussy and let's just take this piece of track. Yeah, we could be fussy and put ground cover there, but we don't need to. We're just going to go ahead and paint this guy up. So I've got, let's come out here again for a second. So I've got a jar of paint, the paint I always use for my ground. You can use any brown paint you want. If you want to copy mine, there's the numbers you can take to Home Depot on the different colors. But any brown paint will do, of any kind whatsoever. And I've got a brush, and pretty much any size brush will do. I kind of like this size brush. It's sort of in between large and small for a job like this. And we're just gonna, I don't want to block your view of the, I wonder how many of these cows we can paint. That would be unusual. Okay, so got a little bit of paint on the brush, and we're just gonna brush this. And as you see, I haven't put any plaster on here. I mean, I'm always making jokes about this is reality model railroading, but what I should be saying is it's reality model railroading in a hurry, because I just don't. I've got so many things on my mind. I don't want to spend any more time than necessary on a particular thing. And all we did here was just to relocate a little scenery so that we could fit that extra track in. And I've found, well, my whole layout, which you've seen many times in these videos, is simply carved extruded foam like this, blue or pink foam, with a coat of latex paint on it and ground cover sprinkled on it. And that's that's what phase one of all my scenery. Now, clearly, phase two, it could and does involve a lot more details, but right now, look how fast this has gone. And of course, as soon as we get the paint on, I'll come back with the ground cover, and tomorrow it'll look like it's been here for the last 20 years. And only us will know that it's actually brand new. Now, I don't mind putting the paint on fairly thick because we're not covering it with plaster or cloth or any of those other things. So we want to hide some of the imperfections in the, and if we wanted a smoother surface, we could have used a piece of sandpaper. We could have sanded that foam, and before I actually lay the track on here, I'll probably sand that base a little more. But now we're going to grab the dirt. I usually start with the dirt color. This is Woodland Scenics Blended Turf, and you can use anything. But the point is that this is not a grass color; it's a brown color. And so I want it to look uneven. I don't want it to just look all green. So put a little bit more here. There. Now I'm going to cover the rest of it with more of a green grass color. And this is my own blend of burnt grass and green, so it's not too bright. And I'm just pouring it on now because what's going to happen is where there's brown down that fell already, that's going to keep the green from sticking. So this will create an uneven look, even though it looks very even now. It looks like this is all green, but when I vacuum this off tomorrow, the brown underneath is going to stick to the paint, and it'll create a mottled look, kind of like you see over here, sort of an uneven look. And hopefully that uneven look will be similar to what we have here, and it won't look like a whole new part of the terrain. So let me just put the lid on the paint can here. Was there anything else we needed to paint? I don't think so. It's always good to paint more than one thing if you can. But there's So I just wanted to go. Yeah, I'm just checking out the. Yeah, I'm just checking out the. Hold on. Hold on. Okay. What happened? I was trying to look. Oh, there we go. Thanks for your comments, Sparky. It does. It looks 100% better already. Yeah, that's right. And if we go over here, we can see that these tracks are going to come through. Now, another thing we could look at is the alignment of this track. I don't know where this guy came from, but I'm gonna zero in on him so you can see him before I move him. He seems to be carrying a deer or a bear or something that he brought in from the woods. It's kind of cute. It's fun to have a variety of strange little stories on your layout. Those cows fell over, but you know, the number of cows that are still standing after this project is remarkable. Don't you think? Look at that. I mean, we as Bill Messacar pointed out the other day, we really need to build a pen for those cows to keep them from running on the track and getting run over by all the trains that we run. I was just going to say here's the point of origin of these two tracks. So we've got the one that we just prepared for is, do we have this all the way down? Yeah, that's going to go in here. And I think I'll use a long piece of code 55. And then this is going to go in here and we're going to knock that guy over here. We're going to knock him over, put him somewhere else. I don't know if we can get him to stand up or not. Probably not. We'll let him lie down for a little while. But this track here, the plan is put this track in here far enough away from these ground throws so we don't have a clearance problem here. But then have a little stretch here where we have both the narrow and the standard gauge. Well, they're both dual gauge tracks, but my idea is that we can something like this, and we can have a transfer crane that can carry stuff back and forth between the standard and narrow gauge, and we can get at it from the dual gauge track over there. So if there aren't any questions, I think I'm going to call that a day, but I'll be happy to chat with you all for a minute if you have anything you want to talk about. I think that's good enough for one day's construction. Oh, I know what we could do. We could fire up the layout and we could try running that Heistler, which is right here. Wouldn't that be fun? What do you say? Since the Heistler's right here, why don't we fire it up and see what it's like? Here, I'll lower you down a little bit. That would be cool. We got the cows in the background, the brand new scenery. We'll probably come back and vacuum that up tomorrow, but I don't imagine I'll do that on a live stream. That seems like you've already watched me vacuum enough as it is. Let's see what happens when we turn on the layout. I hear something. I don't know if you can hear it. Get our controller out. We'll select. Oh, there it goes. Can you hear that? Nice. I wonder if this track is at all clean. Seems like blow that up a little bit more. Let me lower you down. Oh, there, you can see the action in the center there. Very cool. Not so cool. Why did that stop? Who knows? Yeah, of course, that's the fun of geared locomotives. Now, I don't know why that stopped, but it did. Here, you can really see that action inside. Now, what we should do is go and pick up some log cars, right? What was I thinking? And run an engine by itself. There you saw the headlight come on. There happen to be some empty log cars here that need to be sent back to the mill. This layout, it just runs DCC, and it does not like this little spot right here. I wonder what that is. We can take our track cleaner and clean that up. See if it'll run better next time. Oh yeah, it has been a while since this particular track was used. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to have you lose the view of the engine. My bad. Let's go over here and couple up to some log cars. Oops. Now, you notice that derailed on those points, even though the switch was set the right way? This is my beef with this engine, is that the flanges are not really standard. So it tends to pick frogs. And I don't really understand that. Okay, let's back up. Again, I apologize for the reality video here, but that's what we're doing. Here we go. Pulling those cars out of there. Looks like we're model railroading. We're going to run right into that alcohol bottle. We're not careful. I guess we better move it. This is the trouble with operating on a work site. Let's come down here. I know we really should behave ourselves and log off, but why not? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. When did you ever see such silliness? Now, the good news is we have some serious light over here from the light I was using to show you the turntable. There we go. Does that turn out set right? Yeah, that'll be fine. So much for that. So the good news is it's a cool engine. The bad news is that the flanges are a little finicky and my track is a little dirty. Let's just do that one more time. There we go. Cool. All right, now that we got this far, we might as well try out the turntable, right? Let's move this stuff. All right, let's try the turntable. Right over here, we happen to have an air gauge engine, number 459. We'll just recall that guy. And we'll get him over a little bit of a rough spot there. And we'll blow him up a little bit. And let's run him over the turntable. But we don't have the turntable lined up and you can't see that. So just give me a second to put you at a better angle. I know that the view from trackside is the most realistic, but in this case, we're playing with a turntable, so we might as well get a little bit higher up. So now we're going to use our little stick to align this, and we'll see if we can just back them on. See, that's a little bit too blown up, right? All right, here we go. All right, I need that bell. And we just put our finger on this little stick, move it around, and let's put it, on the shop track. That's the shop track there, one of them. It's a little bit, the rail, as you'll see here, it's a little bit low. Ooh, yeah, see how it derailed? That's because I did, it's a little bit too much of a vertical gap there, because when I was showing it to you, I pushed it too far down into the socket. So let me just pull it up a little tiny bit. Maybe that'll help. I won't go into the saga of the fact that there's no micro-engineering track at the moment, so I had to convert to Pico in the middle of this track laying operation. There we go. Oh, you know what? I didn't turn on the power to the There we go. Remember I showed you that little push button switch? So there you have it. Turntable sort of works. It's brand new, just yesterday, so it'll be fun to see how we tune that up. And let me just show you the push button I was talking about. I put in a little push button switch right down here so I can turn the power off to all of the engine tracks. And of course, when I was showing it off to you, I forgot to turn it back on. Now, if you want, we can reverse ourselves. We didn't really demonstrate. There we go. Whoops. The magic of here. Let's really reverse the engine this time. Now, in theory, I could figure out a way to indent make a little detent or something so that when you're pulling the turntable around, it will align itself perfectly. For another time. All right, any other comments before we sign off? I'm just looking at the computer here. Yeah, that is a nice loco. All right, well, thank you all for joining me, and stay tuned for more videos and live streams whenever we have something interesting to do. And I hope you enjoyed this. Check out my channel for all the other videos that we have. For now, this is Burr Stewart signing off, and I wish you happy modeling.